Chapter 9. The Adventure Comes to an End. Silver and the rest of us pressed on until, all of a sudden, out of the trees in front of us, we heard a thin, high, trembling voice. "Darby McGraw!" it wailed. "Darby McGraw, fetch aft the weapons, Darby!" Again and again and again. The men were petrified. Their faces turned white with fear. "Blimey!" George Merry cried. "It's Flint's voice!" "And those were his last words," said another. "Come," said Silver, "it's not Flint. Flint's in his grave." "Then it's his ghost come back to haunt us," said Mary. "Mates," Silver cried, "I'm here to get that stuff, and I'll not be beat by man nor spirit. I never was feared of Flint, and I'll face him dead if need be. There's £500,000 of treasure just up the hill." "Have you ever heard of gentlemen of fortune turning their backs on that much money?" "Stop it, John," said Mary. "Don't cross the spirit." "Are you sure it's really a spirit?" Silver shot back. "Me, I have my doubts. Did you notice that there was an echo? No man ever seen a spirit with a shadow. Well, what's this one doing with an echo to him, I should like to know? Surely that ain't in nature." This argument seemed weak to me, but you can never tell what will convince a superstitious person. To my wonder, George Merry was relieved. "John's right," he said. "It had an echo." "And come to think on it," Silver added, "it was not quite like Flynn's voice. It was more like old Ben Gunn's voice." "It don't make much difference, do it?" asked one of the men. "Ben Gunn's not here any more in Flint." The older hands were not convinced. "Why, nobody minds Ben Gunn," cried George Merry. "Dead or alive, nobody minds him." It was extraordinary how they regained their sense of well-being. They shouldered their tools and we set forth again. We passed 2 tall trees, and the third loomed up before us. It rose nearly 200 feet into the air, but it was not its size that impressed the men. It was the knowledge that there was gold buried below its spreading shadow. The thought of the money swallowed up their previous terrors. Their feet grew lighter and speedier. Each man imagined the life of wealth and extravagance that awaited him. Silver hobbled forward on his crutch. He tugged furiously on the line that held me to him and shot me a deadly look. He took no pains to hide his thoughts. In the nearness of the gold, all had been forgotten. His promise to me was a thing of the past. I did not doubt that he hoped to seize the treasure, kill every honest man, and sail away laden with crimes and riches. We were now close to the spot, and the men broke into a run. 10 yards further, we came to a halt. Before us was a great excavation, not very recent, for the sides had fallen in, and grass had sprouted on them. In the ditch we saw a broken shovel. The treasure had been found and rifled. The £500,000 were gone. The men were thunderstruck, but for Silver the shock passed almost instantly. His every thought had been set on the money. It had staggered him to discover that it was gone, but he kept his head and made a new plan in an instant. "Jim," he whispered, "stand by for trouble." He passed me a pistol and smiled at me as if we were old friends. I was so shocked by his constant change of heart that I couldn't help whispering, "So now you're on my side again?" There was no time for him to answer. Mary had found a single coin in the pit. He held it up. "A guinea!" he shouted furiously, shaking the coin at Silver. "That's all that's left. That's your £500,000 of treasure, is it?" Silver kept calm. He took a few steps back, keeping one eye on Mary and the others. "Mates," Mary shouted, whipping out his cutlass, Those two are to blame, Silver and the boy. Let's get 'em." Then, crack, 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 3 muskets flashed out of the thicket. George Merry tumbled headfirst into the excavation. Another man spun like a top and fell to the ground. The other 3 turned tail and ran for it with all their might. A few seconds later, Dr. Livesey, Gray, and Ben Gunn stepped out of the thicket with smoking muskets. Silver did not try to escape. Instead, he shot George Merry. Then he dropped his weapons and threw an arm around me. He called out to Dr. Livesey, "Thank you kindly, Doctor. I'm on your side now. Jim here will bear me out. And you arrived just in the nick of time for the 2 of us." "So it is you, Ben Gunn," added Silver. "I'm Ben Gunn, I am," replied old Ben. After this exchange, Dr. Livesey explained what had taken place. It was a story that profoundly interested Silver, and Ben Gunn was the hero. Then, crack, 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 3 muskets flashed out of the thicket. George Merry tumbled head first into the excavation. During his lonely wanderings about the island, old Ben had found the pointing skeleton, and later he had found the treasure. He had dug up the loot and carried it away. It took many trips, but eventually he stashed it all safely in a cave. After the pirates attacked the stockade, the doctor had gone to see Ben Gunn and had wormed the secret out of him. The next morning, the doctor went to Silver and made a deal with him. He agreed to give Silver the map, which was of no use anymore, along with some supplies. The doctor and the others were eager to get away from the stockade. They wanted to keep an eye on the cave where Ben Gunn had stored the treasure. That morning, the doctor left the squire and the captain in the cave. With Ben Gunn and Gray, he set out to ambush the mutineers. He knew they would follow the map straight to the spot where the treasure had been. In order to arrive before the pirates, Dr. Livesey directed Ben Gunn to call out in Flint's voice. He guessed this might upset the superstitious pirates, as in fact it did, and would give them time to arrive at the spot first. Then the 3 of them hid in the thicket. They opened fire on the mutineers when they turned against Silver and me. "Ah," said Silver, "it was fortunate for me that I was with Hawkins here. If he hadn't been here, you would have let old John be cut to bits and never given it another thought." "Not a thought," replied Dr. Livesey. We marched back to the shore, got into one of the landing boats, and set off for the Hispaniola. When we got back to the ship, we sailed her to a cove near Ben Gunn's cave. Ben Gunn's cave was large and airy. There was a fire at the mouth of it, and Captain Smollett lay by the fire. The captain was astonished to see Silver return with us. "What brings you here?" he asked. "Come back to do my duty, sir," said Silver. In the flickering light of the cave, I beheld heaps of coins and stacks of golden bars. That was Flint's treasure that we had come so far to seek, and that had already cost the lives of a number of men. How many lives had it cost to gather all this gold? How many seamen had been shot or marooned or sent to the bottom of the ocean? There's no way to tell. The next day we hauled the treasure to the ship. I spent the morning in the cave packing money into bags. It was a strange collection of coins. There were guineas, doubloons, moidores, and sequins adorned with pictures of all the kings of Europe for the last 100 years. There were strange oriental pieces stamped with what looked like bits of spiders' webs. There were round pieces and square pieces and pieces with holes in the middle, so you could wear them around your neck. We had nearly every variety of money in the world, I do believe. Most pirates likely sailed ashore to spend their treasures on pleasure and luxury. If, however, like Flint, a pirate saved and buried his loot, he would eventually boast a collection from many different countries. A farthing was worth a quarter of an English penny, and a guinea was worth £1 plus 1 shilling. The English guinea, as well as the Spanish doubloon, Portuguese moidore, and the Italian and Turkish sequins, were all gold coins in common use during the golden age of piracy. A coin could be spent not only in its nation of origin, but also in its colonies in the Americas and the Caribbean. I spent the morning in the cave packing money into bags. It was a strange collection of coins. Silver worked alongside the rest of us as if nothing at all had occurred, and we heard nothing of the other 3 mutineers until that night when we heard them singing and shouting. "Merriment," said Silver. A meeting was held, and we decided that it would be safest to leave the 3 mutineers on the island, but with some food and supplies. At last we weighed anchor and began our voyage home. As we pulled away, we saw the mutineers. They were kneeling on the sand with their arms raised. We felt sorry for them, but we could not risk another mutiny. The doctor shouted to them and told them where to find the supplies we had left. When they saw we would not come back for them, they got out their muskets and fired at us. The shots went whistling over our heads. We sailed to a port on the coast of South America, where we were surrounded by boats full of native people selling fruits and vegetables. I went ashore for the day with the squire and Dr. Livesey. The sight of so many smiling faces, the taste of tropical fruits, and above all the lights of the town made a charming contrast to our dark and dangerous stay on the island. When we returned to the ship, Ben Gunn made a confession. Silver was gone. Ben had helped him escape, though he assured us he had done so to save our lives. That was not all, though. The old sea cook had taken with him a sack of coins worth 400 guineas. "I am pleased to be rid of him so cheaply," said the doctor. Well, to make a long story short, we got a few new hands on board, made an enjoyable cruise home, and reached Bristol just as Mr. Blandley was beginning to think of sending the rescue boat. All 5 of us got a share of the treasure and used it wisely or foolishly according to our personalities. Captain Smollett retired. Ben Gunn got £1,000, which he spent or lost in 19 days, for he was back begging on the 20th day. He is a great favorite, though, and is a notable singer in church on Sundays. Of Silver we have heard no more. That formidable man with 1 leg has at last gone clean out of my life. I dare say he met his wife and perhaps still lives in comfort with her and Captain Flint. I hope so, for I fear that his chances of comfort in the next world are very small. There is still more treasure hidden on that island, some silver bars and some weapons that Flint buried. But nothing could tempt me back there. The worst dreams I ever have are when I hear the waves booming or when I bolt straight upright in bed, the voice of Captain Flint ringing in my ears. "Pieces of 8! Pieces of 8!"